Welcome to the Ignite Your Confidence with Karen Laos podcast. Today,
Welcome to Ignite Your Confidence with Karen Laos, 200 episode. Woohoo! Karen Laos in the house. Have fun.
hey, everyone. This is episode 200. Wow. And it is how to build trust in seconds and influence the room with Powerhouse Presence. We don't just need presence, we need Powerhouse Presence. We're going to talk about 7 ways today to showcase what Powerhouse Presence looks like, very much in line with what we've been talking about. And specifically, I want to give you, as usual, very practical, powerful tips. And if you would like to stay around till the end, I will tell you a little bit more about my reflections on when I started and where I'm at now with the podcast. But first thing I will say is that I'm very proud to report that I am continuing to be in the 3% globally with this podcast, which tells me that it is making a difference. And I don't know about you, but there is nothing like making a difference in the world, knowing that the things that you're saying are making an impact on others. And you as well are making an impact in the world based on the work and the life that you lead and live. So let's talk about this. First of all, I love this idea of how do you build trust within seconds, because it is very true. People decide within 1/10 of a second if they trust you, if they like you, if they believe you. They're deciding very quickly. And it's simply what we do. So remember, people are deciding that before they've even had time to evaluate your expertise. And this is why Powerhouse Presence is about making those first seconds match the value you already bring. So let's start with what I call, here's number 1, the handshake moment. And the colon on this one, the handshake moment, ultimately, trust starts before your content does. Before people are even processing your words, they're reading your energy, your posture, your pace, where your eyes go, where your, how your face looks, and the certainty. So the thing that I would ask you is, do I look and sound like I trust myself? That is what people want to know, is how certain are you? And it is amazing. I will tell you, I have learned so much about certainty in the past year around the importance of this. I recently had a potential corporate client actually point out the fact that I was so clear and transparent about my fees that it stood out. And she said, that is exactly what my team needs. That's why we want to bring you on. And it was a really wonderful reminder to me about how certainty sells. And it is so powerful to be confident in the things that you are doing. And so the thing that I want to remind you of are these 4 components of Powerhouse Presence. And if you've been listening to me for a while, you've heard me talk about these before. But related to trust and the way we come across, the first piece is connection. So there's 4 components, and then each one has a behavior that maps to it. We're not going to get into all those details today, but I do want to remind you that the trust piece is built through the connection that you build with someone else. So that's essentially eye contact and some part of your facial expression. Number 2 is energy. How are you coming across with your posture, your facial expression? Although there's technically, I merge likability also with this. So again, let me just say them all. It'll be simpler. And then I'll tell you the behaviors quickly. So the first one is connection. Second one is energy. Third, likability. And fourth, credibility. Not necessarily in that order, but definitely making sure that you've got all of those components through your eye contact, facial expressions, hand gestures, posture, your voice, and the way you move your body as well. Whether it's on a stage or in a meeting, do you fidget or are you deliberate in the movement that you make? Number 2, calm certainty builds credibility. I want you to write this down. You belong in every room. Now, you may not believe that right now, and if it feels better for you to say, or more authentic to say, you belong in the room, then do that. Use what works for you. But this one is so powerful. This is one I learned from my friend Christine Campbell-Rappin. The idea that you've got to say that to yourself. I belong in the room. You belong in the room. And it isn't about Powerhouse Presence, isn't about being the loudest or the most charismatic person in the room. It's the ability to communicate. I belong here. I know what I bring, and I don't need to prove it. How many of us, and I see this all of the time with my clients, people trying to prove themselves, giving more data or detail, or sharing more testimonials or accolades to show people, I'm good, I'm good, I'm good. Remember, you don't need to prove this to anyone. Confidence doesn't rush. Number 3, your first words matter. So let's actually go back for a moment, because the moment that you walk into the room, here's one of the tips that I would recommend. Before you, whether it's getting on a Zoom call or physically walking into a place, take a moment to ground yourself, breathe and smile and say, I belong in this room. And then walk in, because that energy is going to be felt. I recently did this, reminding myself of my own advice, and it was so fun because I walked in the room with a big smile on my face thinking, I wonder who I'm going to meet today. It's going to be great. So remember the power of that calm certainty. And the thing that I would say too is, remember when you're walking in, remember to think, this is going to be amazing. Have the thoughts and the expectations that this is going to be a great meeting. It's going to be a great time with people, whatever that might look like for you. But remember always your desired outcome. And this is another shout out to my wealth mentor, Susan Glusica. What is your desired outcome with any conversation, any interaction? That's the thing to be thinking about in advance, because energetically it will feel different. Okay. Now let's talk about your first words matter. In addition to walking in and even extending your hand, ready to shake people's hands with a smile, your first words matter from the perspective of, don't spend your opening warming up or qualifying, apologizing, or giving unnecessary backstory. There are so many things. What I learned at my career at Decker Communication is what they call elbow. Lovely bunch of words. How many times do you start, or have you heard a speaker start with, thank you so much for coming, I'm so excited to be here? That is a fluff phrase. Fluff words that aren't necessary. Get to the point. Use bottom line up front from the US military, BLUF, bluff. Instead of something like a lot of people do, oh, I've been thinking about this and I'm not sure if everyone will agree, but get rid of all that and simply say, here's what I recommend. That's it. It's so much simpler. All right, number 4, remove the language that leaks authority. We've talked about this a lot, minimizing language, words like just, sorry, I think, maybe, hopefully. And does that make sense? Can unintentionally weaken a strong message. You don't need to sound aggressive. You need to sound clear. So remember the power of getting rid of that language, and even notice the difference here. I want to give a couple of examples. I love talking about this because it continues to come up, and I'm still working on this too. For example, imagine if I said, I just want to share a little tip with you, versus I want to share a tip with you. It's a completely different experience. All I did was take out the words just and little. These minimizing language, these words creep in, and then it comes across as if we don't have authority and the credibility that we actually have. Number 5, stand out by being concise. This is where I go back to what I see a lot is people trying to prove themselves, especially representatives of companies or even individuals, just giving way too much information than is needed for the meeting. And people are not going to absorb all of that detail. In fact, they will probably tune out, especially if it doesn't feel relevant to them. Be careful about that over-explaining. And it goes back to what I said about that proving yourself. And ironically, it can diminish it. So make your point, give the evidence, and stop talking. The more important your point, the less you should bury it. Number 6, your presence should match your brilliance. I see this a lot too. The most brilliant, amazing women. I actually call this the credibility gap. That gap between how you're coming across and what you actually know or the experience that you have. And even when I had a team researching how I came across out in the public, it said Karen doesn't need more credibility. She needs to stop hiding it. I would have never thought that I was hiding my credibility, but boy, the way that they described it, I went, oh, I can actually see what they're talking about here. And I want to remind you that we are always in process. So credibility gap is the thing that's the opportunity for all of us to close the difference between the gap between our expertise and how, like, basically, I'll speak to you, how your expertise and how you land. And it is amazing how many talented people have that skill gap. And a lot of us don't know how others are experiencing us. This is also why it's so important to record yourself. Make sure that you're recording yourself on a regular basis so you can see and hear how you come across. I want to take a quick moment to ask you a favor. If you have found enjoyment and this has helped you, the value, this podcast has been valuable to you, I would be so appreciative if you would write a brief review for me. If you're willing, go to wherever you're listening to this and give a review. And it also helps more people find this. There's a reason why we have been 3% in as far as the top 3%, according to Listen Notes. And it is because the podcast is continuing to bless others. So if it is a blessing to you as well, and it's helped you, that would be amazing. The other thing I wanted to say is if you know anyone, I've got a few more open spots on my calendar for some speaking engagements this year. If you know anybody in the corporate world who makes decisions around events and you're looking for a speaker, or you know an executive that is looking for someone to come in and do some training with their team around communication and the traditional executive presence, although I call it Powerhouse Presence, which is what today is all about, I would be also very grateful, and we could get more of these tools out to more people. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, let's come back now to number 7. This is our last one. Trust is built through consistency. This isn't something that we think about very often, but it is amazing, isn't it? When you have somebody who says they'll do something and then they generally do, but then they're inconsistent. So you're going, I can't always rely on them. And then trust starts eroding. Or maybe it's something where they are a certain way with some people, but then they're different with others. And it feels like they're more of a chameleon. So it's hard to know who they actually are. I think about a leader that I knew many years ago who was amazing with his team, just fantastic. But he was a little bit gruff with clients, which is funny. You'd think it would be the other way around, but he was inconsistent. So then trust goes down. So let's talk about a little bit more about this. Powerhouse Presence isn't a performance that you suddenly turn on for a board meeting, for example. It's how you show up repeatedly, that consistency, keeping your word, being prepared, communicating clearly, handling pressure well, and saying what needs to be said, leaning into some of those awkward or uncomfortable moments, and making sure that that consistency is built over time. So I have a few takeaways that I want to suggest that you could use immediately. I call it the 3-second reset. Before entering a meeting, and we touched on this already, but stop at the door or before clicking join or on the computer, for example, put your shoulders down, take a deep breath, exhale, and ask yourself, how do I want to be experienced in this room? Pick 3 words. And I'll give you 3 that I love: calm, credible, clear. How do you want people to experience you? So that's the 3-second reset. The other one, I will say until the day I die: speak first in your meeting. Contribute within the first few minutes. Don't wait until you've formulated the perfect thought. Speaking early also makes it easier to contribute again. You immediately start building relationships. It is a beautiful way to also showcase your leadership and say it in those moments of silence where nobody wants to start the meeting. I've seen this happen so many times. It takes usually for the average audience about 15 seconds before somebody will say something. So you be the one to speak first. Research shows that the people that speak the most, which sometimes maybe people speak too much, but research shows that the person that speaks the most is the leader. Something to consider. The next practical takeaway is cut the runway. Notice how long it takes you to get to your point. Challenge yourself to eliminate the first 20 to 30% of what you normally say. You might be surprised that it's actually enough. And then practice the pause. Make your point make your point and then count. 1, 2. Before continuing, don't rush to fill a silence. Let your words land. So that's 2 seconds after you make your point. This is also great in negotiations for sure. And then do a trust audit. After an important conversation, ask yourself these 3 questions. Did I sound like I trusted myself? Was my point clear? And third, did my presence match my expertise? So remember, you don't stand out by trying harder to get attention. You stand out because people know what they can count on when you're in the room. That ties beautifully to trust and powerhouse presence and what that means to me. So this week, don't try to be more impressive. You already are. Be more intentional. Speak sooner. Say less. Slow down. Trust your own voice. That's powerhouse presence. So that's what I've got for you. But I am going to share, for those of you that want to hang out a little bit longer, I want to share a little bit about when I started this podcast and how it came to be. So I am absolutely astonished that we are at 200 episodes already. It was back in the fall of 2020 when I was on a networking call with someone, and it was a group of people actually. And I felt particularly drawn to this woman named Ebony Wiley. And we had a connection call after that, one-on-one. And she just asked me, have you ever thought of doing a podcast? And I said, well, sometime, yeah, but no, I haven't. And she just interrupted me and said, well, I could show you how and get that up and running within 6 weeks. And I was very intrigued by that. So I said, okay, let's make it happen. And we ended up doing a trade of services at the time. I helped her with her presence and she helped me with the podcast. So it is amazing. At first, I was thinking this was going to be so hard. And not to say that it's been easy, but a lot of times what I have found in myself and others is that we catastrophize or think about all the things that could go wrong or how complicated something could be. And to think that it's as simple as turning on a Zoom screen, having a microphone that you speak into, having some organized content that can be useful and relevant to your audience, and then talking. It is really amazing. I had guests for quite some time, for those of you that have been around with me, but I came to realize a couple of things. I found that as much as the guests were great, a lot of times we didn't get to really meaty practical tips. And frankly, it was also in part because it was a little challenging to get the bios, the headshots, all the assets from the others. And that's no fault of anybody. It's just an extra administrative load combined with the fact that a number of people said, I really love it when you do your solo episodes because I know that I'm going to get immediately practical tips. So that's a little bit of history on that. But what I wanted to share too, that I hope is helpful to you, is find an outlet that makes you feel even more confident. I had already had quite a bit of confidence in my speaking voice because I've been doing that my whole career, but I had no idea how having a microphone in my face, speaking to people on content that I had learned and created at the same time, over time, how much that would benefit others. So it really elevated my confidence beyond something that I even thought that I would have needed. So the reward of doing this, in fact, right before I recorded this, a friend of mine said, oh my gosh, you have to record a podcast now. How do you feel? Is that energizing? Is that worth it? And I said, yes, absolutely. I regularly get some beautiful emails that people have said, wow, this really helped me negotiate a deal or speak up for myself, whatever it might be. And it is absolutely, again, it absolutely warms my heart. And I want you to know that my heart is absolutely filled with gratitude for you listening to this episode, because it's what keeps things going, frankly. And if there is something that has made an impact on you, obviously my number one ask is if you would do a review. Particularly Apple Podcasts is great, but wherever you listen. But also, if you ever want to reach out to me and tell me that it's made an impact, I want to give you my email as well as my phone number. So my phone number, if you want to text me, is 415-602-0558. And my email is Karen@KarenLaos.com. And on that note, the other thing I wanted to share about that is the amount of incredible. Well, I just want to remind you, again, I'm trying to not say just, I want to remind you that your voice matters, that you are brilliantly you, and that you truly do belong in any room that you want to walk into. The biggest question is, do you trust yourself to step into your own version of powerhouse presence and forge it over time? And I will be here holding your hand every step of the way, and I'm rooting for you. So let's forge that powerhouse presence together. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time. If you loved today's episode, please subscribe and leave a review. It helps other people find the podcast faster, and it certainly helps me. Remember, you too can stand out with unshakable confidence.